The sun that morning felt like a promise. I remember standing there, out on the perfectly manicured lawn of that country club estate in Austin, feeling the Texas breeze tug gently at my veil. Early spring, just the right side of warm. The air smelled like cut grass and roses flown in from somewhere expensive. Everything was beautiful. Everything was perfect. At least on the surface. I was the bride, 34, youngest daughter of a mechanic and a school secretary. Tech entrepreneur, yes, but I didn't come from money. I came from sweat, from choices that cost sleep. My startup was finally turning heads in the right rooms, but today wasn't about that. Today was about love. Or at least I thought it was. My dress was simple but elegant, lace, ivory. My mother cried when she saw me. My father tried to hide how proud he was, smoothing down his tie 5 times more than necessary. I stood tall, confident, grateful, ready to become part of a family far removed from my roots. And they were. His family, wealthy, prestigious, political connections, family foundations, Ivy League lineages, the kind of people who wore subtle jewelry that screamed value and smiled in ways that made you question yourself. Still, I walked into that day believing love would bridge the gap. That maybe, just maybe, they'd see who I really was. But the signs were there. They were always there. My soon-to-be mother-in-law greeted me with the kind of hug you give a stranger on an elevator, cold, perfunctory. Her lips barely moved when she said, "You look nice." I noticed how she skipped calling me by name. Later, I found my name misspelled on the seating chart. Madeline, not Madeline. I laughed it off. A bridesmaid leaned in quietly. "Hey, just so you know, I heard Brett's cousins cracking jokes earlier. Something about gold digging being in fashion again." She looked guilty, even repeating it. Brett, my fiancé, stood nearby, fussing with his cufflinks. I asked him if he was okay. "Nerves," he said, not looking up. "Just pre-wedding nerves." I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him. Because I didn't come this far to fall apart now. Dinner was served. Crystal glasses clinked, candles flickered. It was everything a Pinterest board could dream of. Then his father stood up to speak. He lifted his glass and said, "To my son, a man of vision, determination, and legacy. We always knew he'd do well. We just didn't know he'd take such an unconventional route to find his partner." Laughter. Muted. Awkward. He kept going. "Sometimes love finds us in unexpected places, and sometimes it even crosses social lines." My stomach dropped. I caught my father's jaw tightening, his hand curling into a fist on his lap. My mom looked down into her wine. I smiled. That was my job today. Smile, regardless. Then came her turn. My mother-in-law glided to the microphone. Designer gown. Perfect hair. Polished smile. "We are thrilled," she began, "to welcome Madeline into our family. It's always surprising when someone from outside our circle captures the heart of someone like Brett." She paused just long enough to let it sting. I mean, who would have thought? A love story between two very different worlds, a real modern fairy tale, from the other side of the tracks to here. The room fell into a hush so sharp it felt like glass breaking. A camera flash went off in my face. I sat still, completely still. My hands were clenched under the table, hidden by the linen. I looked at Brett. He didn't move, didn't blink, just sipped his wine. They didn't know. A week before the wedding, I'd closed a merger deal that would value my company at $950 million. It wasn't public yet. I hadn't even told Brett. I didn't want my worth tied to my bank account. I wanted them to see me. But now, I saw them, clearly. Every backhanded comment, every fake smile, every assumption. They believed they were better than me, richer, smarter, superior. They thought I was desperate to marry up. I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth and kept breathing. Let them talk. Let them gloat. Let them think they've won. I reached for my glass with calm, steady fingers. Took a sip. Inside, something shifted. A cold, clear thought settled in. Let's give them the version of me they expect. For now. I stood up from the table slowly. "Excuse me." I said softly, pushing back my chair. As I made my way past her, my mother-in-law caught my arm gently. She leaned in close and whispered, "Don't take it personally, dear. It's just how these things go." I turned, held her gaze, steady and even. "Oh, I won't," I said. Then, after a pause, "But you might." After the last guest drifted out, their laughter faded like smoke. The music stopped, the clinking glasses, the polite applause, it was all gone. What remained was the sound of my own footsteps echoing through the hallway as I made my way to the bridal suite alone. The room looked exactly as it had hours ago, untouched. Candles still flickered by the bathtub, a bottle of champagne sat unopened on the counter. My husband, Brett, was nowhere to be seen. I stood in the doorway for a long time, just listening to the silence. In that stillness, her voice came back. His mother. Her words ran on a loop inside my head, mocking, dressed in elegance, dipped in venom. I slipped off my heels, walked to the mirror, slowly undid the pins in my hair. My wedding dress, now just fabric and lace, felt like a costume. I took it off piece by piece and laid it on the chair. It wasn't grief that followed. It was something colder. "How did I end up marrying into this?" I said out loud, not expecting an answer. Time passed, slowly, then suddenly. Around 2 a.m., the door opened. Brett stumbled in, his shirt half untucked, reeking of whiskey and whatever bar he'd disappeared to after the last toast. He didn't look at me, just dropped his jacket on the floor. "It's done," he mumbled. "Let's not start drama tonight." I stared at him. "Drama?" He loosened his tie. "Yeah, it's been a long day. Just let it go." I took a deep breath. "Did you know what your mother was going to say?" He froze for a second. That told me everything. "They don't trust easy," he said finally. "You'll have to prove yourself." That line stung more than her speech. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. He didn't see it. I turned away and sat on the edge of the bed. My mind drifted back to a dinner from a few months ago. His aunt's voice, low but sharp, carried through the kitchen as I helped clear dishes. "Let's just hope he's not being played," she'd whispered. "She seems nice, but come on, we all know gold digging isn't extinct." I remembered hearing it. I remembered standing there, gripping the edge of a plate, heart pounding, and I let it go. Told myself it was ignorance. Told myself they'd come around. That night, I went to bed with hope. Told myself, if they see how I treat him, they'll understand. Foolish. I turned back toward Brett, who was now lying on the bed scrolling through his phone. "Do you believe them?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Believe what?" "That I married you for money." He laughed like I'd asked if the sky was blue. "Madeline, this family's name carries weight. If you can't handle that, maybe you're not ready for it." That was it. That was the line that cracked something inside me. He didn't love me. He wanted a wife who could fit the mold, sit pretty, nod and smile while the family talked circles around her. I stood up, walked closer, calm as ever. "I don't need to prove anything to people who think I'm beneath them," he scoffed. "Jesus, sleep it off." He turned his back. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked to the balcony, opened the door, and stepped into the night. The city was quiet. The stars were blurred behind the soft glow of the skyline. I gripped the railing and stared ahead, letting the wind hit my face. "This isn't love," I whispered. "This is negotiation." And I was done negotiating. I looked down at my hand. The ring sparkled under the moonlight, cold, perfect, meaningless. I walked back inside, opened the drawer of the nightstand, and placed the ring inside. Then I locked it, not as an ending, as a warning. I woke to pale sunlight slipping through curtains I hadn't pulled shut. The room smelled of last night's perfume and stale hope. I dressed quietly, choosing simple clothes, nothing flashy, a blouse, dark jeans. I didn't say goodbye. There was no need. My husband was still asleep, snoring softly, unaware. On the drive to his family's estate, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I practiced a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Behind that facade, I felt hollow, yet determined. I told myself I would observe, learn, and maybe decide what to do next. The estate looked pristine, pale morning light casting long shadows on marble steps. The garden smelled of damp earth. There was something curated in every detail: ornate railings, perfect hedges, breakfast tables laden with fruit and floral arrangements. It felt rehearsed, just for show. They greeted me. His cousins exchanged nods. The aunt who whispered months ago, the one who spoke of gold-digging outsider, was there. She smiled at me, but it wasn't warmth, it was appraisal. As we sat down to brunch, voices floated. Values, legacy, ethics, how families uphold tradition, how people must know their place. I felt like I was auditioning for respect. His cousin leaned in across the table, voice soft. "You held yourself together well yesterday. I would have lost it." I nodded, said, "I don't cry in public. Some things aren't meant for display." Quiet defiance, I thought. It upset them. I saw it in softened smiles and paused glances. Then one aunt mentioned a charity dinner from 2 years ago. I froze mid-bite. She said, "I think some people just want in on the trophy side, don't you?" It landed. A memory flashed. I was invited as a +1 once, seated at a hidden table, made to feel invisible, left standing while others sat. I told myself then it was a misunderstanding. That night was supposed to be about giving, about community. Now I saw it clearly. It was a test. And I let them believe I was weak. I set my fork down, excuses forming in my mind. I excused myself from the table under the guise of needing air. Walking through the garden felt like stepping out of a cage. My hands trembled slightly when I pulled out my phone and messaged my assistant. Drafts, documents, copies of contracts, evidence. This wasn't revenge. This was alignment. With truth. Back at the table, I saw the room differently. Every whispered glance, every polite nod. I fought the urge to yell. Instead, I held my composure. I let the words hang in the air, unspoken, but razor sharp. I would not be gaslighted anymore. "Just needed a breath of fresh air," I said when I returned, voice calm. "So much to think about." I smiled, not warm, sharp, like a blade she couldn't see. They shifted. They noticed. His mother's eyes flicked to my hands, ring glinting. I felt her discomfort. It felt good. They embraced me, hugging me as if welcoming a daughter. I felt the lie in her arms, but I nodded. I played the role. Because right now, I needed them to believe I was just composed. As we left, she leaned closer and whispered, "Welcome to the family, dear." The words tasted bitter. I looked up and said, "You'll remember this moment." One day, the message came through at 10:13 a.m., sharp, like everything else they did, calculated. "Dinner Wednesday, just us. Let's talk about expectations now that we're all family." It wasn't phrased as a question. It never is with her, sugar-coated poison. She didn't invite me. She summoned me. I said yes. I picked a slate gray dress. Tailored, clean lines, no jewelry except a slim watch, polished, but unreadable. My husband claimed a client meeting popped up, said he couldn't make it. Funny how convenient his absences have become. By 5:45, I was already seated at the restaurant, downtown Houston, sleek, expensive, sterile. The kind of place that's all appearance, no soul. I ordered sparkling water and waited. Not nervous, just alert. They walked in as a unit. My mother-in-law, her husband, and 2 others I'd only seen in family photos. I recognized the woman from one of those gala nights. The one who once said my dress was brave. I knew what this was. A carefully curated ambush. They didn't waste time. Small talk turned into side comments, compliments that double as criticisms. Marriage is about compromise, darling. We all contribute in our own way. Image matters in families like ours. They danced around the wedding, saying it was misunderstood, taken out of context. They never said sorry, just excused themselves from guilt with pretty words and expensive wine. I nodded. I smiled. I said nothing. Let them pour their condescension out like they were watering a plant. Then the check came, and it just sat there. They looked at me. I looked back. No one moved, no one offered, so I reached for it. Quietly paid the bill. Didn't flinch. Didn't blink. If they wanted to test me, they should have picked a game I hadn't already mastered. I set my napkin down. Took my time. I think we should be honest, I said, voice even. Let's stop pretending this dynamic is accidental. They went still. I remember the charity event. I remember your cousin's toast at the rehearsal dinner. I remember being left out of photos, out of conversations, out of every circle, unless it was convenient to smile and pretend we were close. I leaned in slightly. You've mistaken my silence for weakness. It wasn't. It was restraint, courtesy. But if there's another moment, another slight, another jab dressed up as tradition, I will not be quiet. I will respond, directly, and publicly, if needed. I didn't raise my voice, didn't scowl. I just looked each of them in the eye, one by one, measured, clear, and then I stood. Mid-sentence, while one of them tried to smooth it over, I pushed the chair back with calm control. Walked out before dessert. Driving home, I felt something loosen inside me. Not joy. No, that's too simple. But something released. The pressure to be liked. Gone. The illusion that I could win them over with grace. Dead. I remembered Maya Angelou's words, the ones I'd underlined years ago in a secondhand bookshop paperback. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I pressed record on a voice note. Just a few thoughts, reminders, what I need to protect, what I need to build, my peace, my dignity, my options. I whispered, this isn't about leaving. It's about knowing how to leave if I ever must. Back home, I didn't bring it up. He didn't ask. I moved a few work files to a private folder, opened a clean new bank account, separate, quiet, no shared passwords, no links, just mine. Small steps, but they matter. At dawn, I felt my phone buzz, a message from my sister-in-law. They said you threatened them? I set the phone down, poured my coffee, smiled. Saturday's barbecue started with laughter and the sizzle of grills over charcoal. Summer in the Houston suburbs meant humidity, cicadas buzzing, and voices raised over plates of potato salad. I stood by the picnic table, holding a glass of iced tea, trying to steady my breathing. The sun was high, but I felt heat down my spine. This was no reset. It was a stage. I picked my clothing on purpose, a structured blazer over a modest blouse, tailored pants, no frills, nothing easy to dismiss. I watched them notice, silent pauses in greetings, eyes widening at how I carried myself. My heart clenched, but I held my posture. When Brett walked up beside me, it was polite and distant. There was space between us. I did not lean in. They circulated, cousins, neighbors, people I barely knew, smiling, shaking my hand, whispering. One extended family member caught me aside. Marriage means learning to adjust, you know? They nodded, expecting agreement. I nodded, but inside I burned. Then an aunt stepped in with a deeper jab. She mentioned the family foundation, control of assets, influence, almost smirked. Not even hidden. She said it plainly. I set my glass down. Do you mean who controls me? Or who's afraid I can't be controlled? My voice quiet, but sharp enough. Conversations hummed. Heads turned. My words floated in the air, weighty. Their power weakened visibly, like a crack in a facade. I raised my glass, not for the sideshow, not for their control. I stood tall enough that quiet dread filled the yard. Thank you for having me here today, I began, calm. But respect is not a favor. It's a mutual agreement. My gaze swept across faces. I love Brett, and I expected to join a family, but not as someone silenced. There was silence, a flush on his mother's cheek, discomfort on their guests' faces. I didn't alter my tone. I let my words land. I've kept things private, my finances, my work, my dreams, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't need anyone to decide their value. I paused. If this continues, if small insults become traditions, if control becomes expectation, then I will not stay silent anymore. My voice was steady. There was no pleading, just boundary. He looked at me, pained, maybe surprised. Others stared. Some applauded softly, some frowned. I surveyed them all. On the drive home, the headlights smeared across the road. Inside the car, Brett said nothing until we reached our street. Then, "You embarrassed them." I didn't respond immediately. I looked out the window. The streetlights, houses. I felt something firm inside me, like stone set in resolve. "I didn't embarrass anyone," I said. "I just told the truth out loud." Later, texting my lawyer, I asked to move up the meeting. I couldn't stay in limbo any longer. The agreement they assumed was mine was not shared. It was not theirs. And it was mine to decide. That night, he confronted me. "Are you threatening my family?" I stared back. I was calm. "No," I said. "I'm just giving them the dignity of a warning." I woke to a stillness so loud it hummed in my ears. No messages, no apologies, not even a reaction from Brett. The house held its breath around me. Light poured through the blinds in hard streaks, cutting across the floor like judgment. I sat up slowly, every muscle resisting motion. Yesterday's words still echoed somewhere in the walls. I checked my phone. Headlines, alerts, gossip. One read, "Bride's speech sparks tension in prominent family." Another, "Overstepping or standing up." No one reached out to ask how I felt. Not even him. He wasn't home. I figured he was out trying to fix the optics. That was always more important than the reality. I walked into his office. Mine too, now I guess. Same oak desk, same heavy air. On the corner was the handkerchief from my mother, still folded from the wedding. White cotton, floral edge. I picked it up. Funny how something so light could feel so burdensome. Then, a knock at the front door. I opened it to find my assistant, eyes nervous. She handed me a thick envelope, sealed, addressed in familiar handwriting. My father's. I closed the door gently, sat on the edge of the couch, and stared at my name written in his script. I hadn't seen that in almost a year. I tore it open. His voice came through every line, measured, strong, tender. He told me he was proud, that he saw strength in how I carried myself. That image would never mean more than integrity. And then, just beneath that grace, a warning. "Don't let them reshape you," he wrote. "They'll try, sweetheart, but who you are, it matters more than all of this." I closed the letter, pressed it to my chest, and breathed. Then, I checked the date on the postmark. 2 days ago. He'd mailed it before the barbecue, before the performance, which meant it should have arrived already, which meant someone had intercepted it, which meant she blocked it. His mother. Of course she did. The welcome table she insisted on setting up for me, complete with flowers and a decorative bowl for cards. The envelope was never in it. My fingers shook, but not from sadness. I felt hollow. This wasn't just about rejection. It was theft, of words, of connection, of a last chance to believe someone in that house saw me. I folded the letter and slid it back in the envelope like it was something sacred. Then, I sat at the desk, opened my laptop, and created a folder. Truths. I started dragging files. Voice recordings, photos, messages, moments I hadn't deleted, maybe instinctively saving for this. I pulled up a new email draft. "Thank you," I typed to my father. "Your words reached me, even if they were delayed." I stared at the screen. Then I closed the tab. It wasn't time yet. I looked up case studies, women who faced family collapse in public view, partners who used silence as armor. I wasn't the first. I wouldn't be the last. But I would not be the quiet one anymore. My story wouldn't be theirs to edit. I called my attorney's office and moved up our meeting. I wasn't ready for war. I was ready for clarity. Still, that afternoon wore me down. I sat on the floor beside the bed, that envelope in my lap. The ache in my chest wasn't just grief, it was something deeper. Disbelief. I whispered to no one in particular. Was it pride? Was it trust? The silence didn't answer. I opened a drawer. The ring still glinted there, untouched. I picked it up, then set it down. I didn't want it on my finger today. Not now. Maybe not again. As dusk set in, the room cooled. I stretched my legs, preparing to stand, when my phone buzzed. A message, no name attached, just a screenshot. Me, mid-toast, hand lifted. Underneath, the caption, just another gold-digging act. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared. The hall smelled of polished marble and anticipation. I walked the red carpet, heels carefully chosen, outfit sharp, sleek blazer, tailored pants. Cameras flashed. The crowd parted. Crow Enterprises banners hung everywhere. I remembered advice friends had given. Walk in, owning your place. They'll believe you belong if you look like you do. I repeated it to myself. Composed. A staffer mistook me for an organizer. Here for setup? She asked. I paused, steady. I'm not with the organizers. I'm here for the signing. It was small, but meant everything. Not wife of, not bride accessory, but me. My name understood. One VIP guest I'd invited was turned away at the gate. The guard said, not on the list, as though our effort, our connection meant nothing. I saw the disappointment in her eyes. I nodded, quietly furious. Then everything shifted. The CEO stood at the podium, expressions dimming lights, cameras trained, audience silent. The 950 lemmer deal lay ready to be signed. My heart hammered. Not from fear, but clarity. I stepped forward, pen in hand, interrupting the ritual. I've been silent through wrong invitations, veiled insults, being erased, I said, voice steady, loud enough that people looked up. But today, I cannot sign under false conditions. I revealed the clause, the one that gave me a title without power. I showed the omission, the betrayal. Cameras snapped. Mother-in-law's face lost its poise. Brett's mouth parted. The hall held its breath. Then I dropped the pen. I refuse to be part of something that dignifies me only in name. The applause, tiny and sharp, followed like lightning. The betrayal was bitter. Photographers swarmed. Live feeds lit up. Journalists scribbled. Social media exploded. My quote trended. Sign under false conditions. Someone whispered behind me. Did she really just say that? I felt adrenaline rush, chest tight. Brett came forward, voice tight. You embarrassed us. I met his eyes, calm. No, I exposed the truth. He couldn't argue. After the ceremony, the gatekeeper twist showed itself. VIPs I had worked to connect with, people I respected, were kept outside behind a velvet rope. His mother's doing. Their eyes searching mine when they were denied. Confusion. Hurt. I stepped forward, said, I'm sorry you were held back on my behalf. Some nodded, some stared, and I walked away with my dignity intact. That night, I received a message. They cannot deny what you did today. I stared at the screen, letting it wash over me. Embarrassment? Maybe for them. Triumph? For me. I paused, breath steady. I closed my laptop. I was starting something new. Late afternoon light spilled across my desk. I was scrolling through media coverage from yesterday, each photo sharper than memory. There I was, standing tall, speaking truth into a microphone. Yet not one tag bore my name. Just Crow Enterprises leadership, team legacy, power players. Not once, my name. I opened the image editor. My finger hovered over the rename field. A pause. That moment held more weight than it should have. I wasn't just left out. I was removed. Deliberately. An email popped up. Dozens of them. Some strangers asked who I was. Others demanded to know what right I had to speak at all. I knew that silence from people I once called family would be louder than any backlash. Still, it stung. I reached for the ring, cold and tight from the drawer. Slipped it on, wrong. Everything about it felt off. The size, the pressure, the way it pinched at the base of my finger. He walked in, eyes heavy from some PR meeting I wasn't invited to. I held up the ring and said, not angry, just real. This says partner, but it doesn't fit. He tried to joke, said it was just a ring. It's not the metal, I told him. It's the message. He started to explain it was just symbolic, but I stopped him. That's the problem. You all love the symbol, not what it's supposed to represent. She was standing in the hallway. I didn't have to look up to know. Probably thought I was being dramatic. But the truth was, I was being precise. Right before sunset, my assistant dropped off a printed copy of an email. Her hands trembled, so I knew. It wasn't gossip. It was fact. I read the email, lines of strategy from his side of the family. Not one word about love, compromise, or respect. Just optics, media control, PR language on how to limit her stage time, avoid overlapping her with key moments, redirect focus if she becomes emotionally reactive. They had a term for me, the narrative risk. Not even a name. Just a risk to manage. I didn't cry, I just sat with it. I opened a notepad, wrote back, not to send, just to say it aloud somewhere. I'll decide my voice, I wrote, and I meant it. Later, I scheduled a stream. No press, just me. I looked into the camera. You've seen the photos, you've read the messages. Let me tell you who I am, beyond what they made you see. I held up the ring, showed the email, pointed to the banner photo behind me. Legacy without inclusion is a lie. I didn't beg for sympathy. I wasn't trying to reclaim a seat. I was burning the chair. The comments lit up. Thousands of people, strangers mostly, typing out things like, "Finally, we see you. Don't back down." My voice cracked once, but I kept speaking. He texted, "You blew it." I answered, "No, I revealed it." I logged off, closed the laptop, removed the ring, and placed it back where it came from. An hour later, the same photos that once erased me were reposted with my name. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible. I sat back in my chair, not victorious, just aware. Aware that I had forced their hand, and whatever happened next, they couldn't undo what had already begun. That night, a headline flashed across my phone. Crow Enterprises apologizes. Board meeting called over internal documents leak. I smiled to myself, just barely. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, just me and my own breathing. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even angry anymore. I'd let go of all that. What I carried now was purpose. The boardroom was already full. All those faces I used to feel invisible in front of now watched me walk in with a presence they couldn't ignore. No makeup tricks, no social media angles, just me, standing tall with a folder in one hand and truth in the other. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I laid out everything. Chronology, patterns of exclusion, screenshots, emails, headlines, even financial misrepresentations tied to how my presence was framed. I didn't ask for anyone to feel sorry. I didn't even expect them to apologize. When I finished, I said it clearly, simply, "You erased me. I reclaimed myself." The room was still. One executive cleared his throat. Another glanced at his watch. Then he, my husband, or whatever that word even meant now, finally looked up. For once, he didn't try to justify. No half smile, no damage control. He said, "I'm sorry." And for a second, it sounded real. Not rehearsed, not strategic, but still, too late, too convenient. I nodded. Not out of forgiveness, but acknowledgement. It was closure, not reunion. The moment the meeting ended, I didn't linger. I walked out without looking back. Upstairs, on the rooftop garden, the city looked almost peaceful, like it didn't know what just happened down below. The breeze touched my shoulders, and I felt light. My assistant met me near the benches and handed me a small box. Inside was the formal foundation proposal I'd spent weeks rewriting. Not a reactive move, something I crafted for a world I wanted to build. I read the mission statement out loud, for women who won't be erased. Then I signed it, not with hesitation, not with a shaky hand. It felt like signing my own rebirth. A week later, I stood outside a local center I'd quietly supported for years. The new plaque read, "The Madeleine Wells Foundation." Not Crow, not anyone else. Just my name. My choice. People gathered. One woman, maybe early 60s, grabbed my hand and said, "You gave us a mirror we didn't know we needed." And maybe that was enough. My phone buzzed. I checked it instinctively. News alert. Crow family steps back from legacy leadership. I read it twice, not because I didn't believe it, but because it no longer mattered. I didn't cheer. I didn't post. I just breathed. For the first time in months, maybe years, I really took a breath that felt like mine. Later that evening, an article floated across my feed. Photo of the new corporate office floor, my name etched beside theirs. Not below, not in italics, equal size, equal weight. I went home, sat down, wrote in my journal for the last time in that chapter of life. Pain taught me clarity. Erasure taught me to write louder. I didn't dodge the past. I mentioned the wedding, the lies, the silence, but not with bitterness. I wrote, "What they tried to erase became my beginning." And then I closed the book. Stood up. A quote drifted through me, one that had followed me since I was a teenager. Maya Angelou. Still, like dust, I rise. And I did. Out of the seat. Out of that office. Into a world no longer filtered through someone else's approval. Later that night, as I washed a dish, a ping echoed from my laptop. A message. Netflix calling, rights option interest in your story. I didn't rush to reply, because this time, I'm the one writing the contract.